Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Very excited for this video as we're going to preface the NBA Draft Combine with some players that I have handpicked to specifically watch for, players that I think are ready to impress, and some players who have a lot on the line as well. So if you guys do enjoy the NBA Draft coverage and this video specifically, be sure to leave a like. It lets me know I'm doing a good job. Subscribe to the channel for more so you don't miss out on future uploads. I'm sure a lot of you have seen my content in the past, so I would love for you guys to subscribe. And let's get into that video now with a video preview. NBA Draft Combine begins this Sunday, May 12th, and it spans for 1 week up until Sunday, May 19th. 78 players have already received invites and will be full participants this year, plus a few extras will likely straggle in toward the end. That will come from the G League Elite Camp, which is a different collection of players who are hoping to earn a call-up into the NBA Draft Combine itself. A bunch of players each year get drafted from the G League Elite Camp, and for those of you who haven't seen the news about this year's Draft Combine, what makes it special, everyone is expected to be a full participant, barring injury throughout the course of the week, obviously. But the new expectation is to be draft eligible, you have to be a full participant during the Draft Combine. It gives greater transparency to not only the fans and the scouts, but also to the organizations, the teams. And it's a much better system now set up to protect NBA organizations. I think we're going to see less and less draft misses as a result of this. Now, of course, there's still going to be misses, just the nature of the beast, but I think it's going to really enhance the way that teams approach this upcoming week, and also the way that they're able to identify talent and who they end up actually drafting on draft night will be a big part of this. And I also think this is going to help favor trade-ups. There's going to be more teams in on the same prospects, which is going to cause a little bit more heightened activity during draft night, similar to the NFL draft. In this video specifically, I'm going to highlight 3 lottery level players with a lot to either gain or lose. Then there's also 5 under the radar names to watch for, and at the very end I also give some honorable mentions, so you're going to want to stick around for that as well. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into lottery level player number 1. Zaccharie Risacher, I think, has a ton to gain, but also a ton to potentially lose this upcoming week when it comes to the NBA Draft Combine. Looking at him as a prospect, he's had moments where he's been one of the hottest shooters in the entire world, shooting nearly 50% from 3 for the first month or 2 of the season over there playing for JL Borg. But then also over the last couple of months, he's been shooting closer to 33% from 3. So there's this real stark contrast between where he was at the beginning of the season in terms of his shooting efficiency to where he has been over the last couple of months as well, which has really left a lot of scouts and executives, I believe, puzzled about who he really is, not only as a shooter, but as a prospect. Obviously, he has a lot to love when it comes to his overall film. He's someone who has a lot of size and length to him, with the upside apparently of being able to shoot the basketball at a high level. Now, I think this Draft Combine week is going to be super important for a player like him specifically, with all the shooting drills and live scrimmages, to flash that outside shooting. If he shoots it really, really well, he's going to likely cement himself as a top 3 pick in the 2024 NBA Draft, just all things considered from a size, length, defensive upside profile with the shooting touch. He will appear to be one of the safest picks in this year's draft. But if he shoots it really poorly, let's say he's just not in the top 10, 15 or so of shooters in this year's Combine in terms of the drills and the way that he performs during scrimmages, well, you could see him definitely bump down a bit in the mock drafts and where people are projecting him to go. For me, I've kind of hovered between pick number 2 and pick number 7 or 8 this year for him, kind of in that range for the most part. So I still look at him as a top 10 pick, even if he doesn't shoot it super well, just because the size, length profile, like I've mentioned a couple of times already, will keep him in that conversation. But this is going to be a very important week for him, one that could really cement him as a really great get for a team, or one that maybe drops him down a few pegs in the actual mock drafts and where people are kind of expecting to see him go come draft night. When we look at prospect number 2, this one I think is a no-brainer to include as a player who has a lot to gain, but also a lot to lose. Nikola Topic. You see his stats on the screen from his time playing in Mega Basket. Obviously, he hasn't found the statistical success playing for Red Star in the EuroLeague. That is what you would expect. That's what made Nikola Ðurisić such an atypical EuroLeague prospect. Not only was he such a great prospect and a great player, he was the EuroLeague MVP at his age. That is extremely unbelievable, and it's still shocking he didn't go first overall in his draft, just looking at that from the reality that we've never really seen a player like Nikola Ðurisić dominate the EuroLeague in the way that he did at his age. So now we're at a spot here where Nikola Topic, obviously, he hasn't been flashing the statistical success as much for Red Star, but there are still a lot of flashes from an actual film and tape standpoint that do impress me with his overall passing vision. I think he's becoming more confident as a shooter. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to a ton of success. If you look at his shooting splits, even playing in Mega Basket, shot under 26% from 3 on the season. But if you compare that in contrast to that to his overall field goal percentage at over 52%, it points to a picture that he's a really good inside the arc finisher. He finishes at the rim extremely well. Now, part of that comes from selectivity and the fact that he's such a good passer. It puts defenses in a bind, but that's a huge positive for him. He's been super efficient on 2-pointers this season, especially in Mega Basket. Now, in Red Star as well, he's flashed that a bit. The free throw percentage is also super high. I'm not one to typically buy in all the way to, hey, here's his free throw percentage, that means he's going to become a good shooter, but it is at least a positive. It means there is some touch to work with there, and obviously there are pieces to his jump shot that I think are translatable to the NBA. Now, you're going to have to speed up his release, and I think a big part of it is just his confidence level, getting him not only to take 3-pointers, but also hunt them, look for them. In today's NBA, your point guard has to be able to score the ball on multiple levels, and I think Topic right now, one of the concerns with him is he going to be able to shoot the 3 well? So coming into this week, if he shoots the ball extremely well at the combine and really impresses people with either his pro day or just throughout the drills and scrimmages, which I think he's going to do very well in the scrimmages, with his passing vision, his playmaking ability, and his raw size, I think he's going to really kill the scrimmages. I think he's going to really impress a ton of people in that setting. Now, I think the question for him, though, not outside of the playmaking, how aggressive is he as a scorer and how well does he score the basketball this week, both in that live action scrimmages and also just on pull-up jump shots, and especially in the drills where he has the ball in his hands, like rising into jump shots, not just necessarily the catch and shoot shots, which still are important. But I think the big question for him, and a big question that teams are going to have about him, can he be your true ball dominant lead guard? And he has to be able to shoot the ball at an impressive clip, or at least a respectable clip, to really cement and warrant that type of adoration for him if a team's going to put the ball in his hands as frequently as his playmaking capabilities suggest might be worth it. Moving on to player number 3. This one I think is a no-brainer inclusion here as well. Cody Williams, a lot to really gain and learn in terms of our understanding of who he is as a player. If you look at his shooting splits, you say, oh my gosh, this is a no-brainer top 5, top 10 pick. He shot over 41% from 3, shot over 55% from the field, was an impressive rim finisher this year. He has a lot of the physical traits you're looking for. He's a tall wing with arms that go on for days, probably a 7-foot plus wingspan. He is an impressive physical specimen, and he has basketball skill that I think utilizes that physicality, that length and size as a player who can get to the rim off of a live dribble. Now, he's not the most impressive playmaker, but I think he's a capable enough playmaker to be able to dish on the move, and that's really the most important thing when you're looking at a wing, someone who's not going to translate to a point forward type. Can he make reads off of a live dribble? Someone like Cam Whitmore last year really struggled in that area, but I loved Cam Whitmore's size, physicality, strength, and his aggression at the rim. Cody Williams isn't quite that blend of physicality and scoring touch at the rim, powered with obviously strong above the rim finishing, but Williams is someone who I think can get to the rim through a variety of different gathers. He can finish above the rim, although he doesn't do it as much as I would love for him to, but I think outside, compared to Whitmore, he's a much better downhill playmaker. I think he keeps his head up a little bit smoother, and I think he's definitely going to be able to hurt teams that over-rotate on him. So from a playmaking standpoint, I think there's upside. Now, this is an example where he didn't shoot free throws very well, and there are a lot of concerns about his actual three-point volume, which is why that 41.5% number on his three-pointers can be a little bit misleading. He was a low-volume three-point shooter, shot about 2 threes a game this past year at Colorado. Now, throughout his freshman season, he did deal with injuries. His usage rate wasn't extremely high, found a decent amount of his success in transition. So again, some of those shooting splits can be a little bit misleading. That's why you can't just evaluate talent based on raw numbers. Otherwise, Zaccharie would be the first overall pick this year. Day'Ron Holmes would go in the top 3. There would be a lot of problems, right? So you can't just look at the numbers and say, well, this is who you should draft because he shot it super well. But the one thing I will say is I think some of the concerns about his shooting are a little bit overblown, because when he did shoot, especially unguarded catch and shoot shots, he was extremely productive and efficient on those attempts. And if you're looking at how you're likely going to want him to play in the NBA, you're probably not going to ask him to create a bunch of shots on his own as a self-creator. You're not going to ask him to take step-back contested threes. You're going to want him to knock down the open catch-and-shoot ones. And I think that's where, looking at his talent, he's able to attack closeout. So if a team aggressively closes out on him, he's going to be able to beat you off the dribble. And if you don't close out on him, you don't respect him, well, he's going to knock down some open shots. So I think Cody Williams is a very underrated prospect right now. I think this week will be huge for him. He was not included in the top 10 from the team survey of potential top 10 picks that would kind of dictate who gets whose medicals and that kind of thing. Cody Williams was not in that top 10 list, but I think by the end of this next week, we are going to look at him as a pretty universal top 10 pick. I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong during the combine here, and I think there's going to be an improvement in his stock over the next 7 to 10 days. So let's talk about some of those under the radar prospects, and this is really the part of the video I'm most excited about. We've talked about Topic and Risacher and Cody Williams so much this year. These are the players I'm really excited to highlight. And some of these names you maybe have never heard. I'm sure most of you have. Obviously, you guys do a lot of research and digging into these prospects, but I'm excited to talk about them. Now, it's not like all of them are no names you've never heard of. I'm not trying to suggest that either. But there might be a couple surprises on this list. The first one I want to talk about here is senior forward Baylor Scheierman. He's actually a fifth-year senior, so he's an older prospect. But wow, what a breakout season he had this year for Creighton. 2 years ago, when he first transferred into Creighton from South Dakota State, excuse me, he was a Jackrabbit. I was kind of expecting big things from him, and he struggled a little bit 2 seasons ago. This year, completely settled into the player I expected him to be. Averaged over 18 points a game, 9 rebounds a night, so he was productive on the glass, and nearly 4 assists per game. And that's really the most important trait here for someone who is about a 6'6" wing. He's got real playmaking attributes to him. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a point guard. I'm not saying he's going to be a high-volume point forward. The player I compare him to most frequently is actually Joe Ingles. Now, part of that is Scheierman's also left-handed. They're both white. Obviously, the physical comps are similar as well. Ingles is a little bit taller and a little bit bigger than Scheierman. But Scheierman, I think, has some of that similar feel from a positional standpoint. And he was extremely productive this year on catch and shoot shots, as well as pulling up off the dribble a bit. 45, 38, 88 splits are very impressive. And my favorite thing about him, and this is where that Ingles comp comes in, Ingles, when he was in Utah, especially with Rudy Gobert, was just a very underrated ball handler, decision maker out of the pick and roll. And Baylor Scheierman led everyone this year in pick and roll efficiency. He ranked in the 100th percentile as a pick and roll ball handler. So he's a player who maximized Ryan Kalkbrenner there in Creighton. Obviously, Trey Alexander is definitely someone who draws some eyes for the Blue Jays. But I think Scheierman was honestly right at the crux of that team's success this past year. His playmaking skill set's on another level compared to a lot of other players and wings in this year's draft. For me, Scheierman, right now I have a first-round grade on. And nobody else, I don't believe, has a first-round grade on him. In fact, I see him most often in like the 50s or 60s for most people. I think Baylor Scheierman's going to have a 10-year NBA career. I think this is a great week for him to display his talent. Now, I think the drills might not go his way. Obviously, some of the physical tests probably aren't going to see him shine. But I think where he's going to really find his success is in live scrimmages, playing basketball, making decisions as a playmaker. That's where we're going to see a lot of success. I think playmakers typically do better in the scrimmages than any other type of archetype. Obviously, defenders have a little bit of an advantage as well. It's hard to score, especially when you don't really have good spacing and you're playing with guys for the first time ever. But I think Scheierman specifically, with his talent level, should have a good week ahead of him here. And I think he's going to cement himself as a draft pick, which right now is a little bit of a question. Some people don't even view him getting drafted. I think he's going to cement himself as a draft pick. I would really strongly consider taking him in the first round, especially a few teams out there that could make some real sense for him, like Boston, Minnesota. I think Denver could really use someone like him as another creator, initiator for their offense. So Scheierman, I think, is going to be a really great get for a team that is hoping to win games. Yes, he's older, but I think he's just flat out a very good prospect. Then we look at Nikola Ðurisić, and this is another player who is on the rise. I remember evaluating Djurisic a few years ago. Been watching him for quite some time, and he's starting to really find some success in Mega Basket, especially as of late. And he's still extremely young for the amount of pro experience he has. He's been playing pro basketball for about 4 years now, but he is 20 years old only. So he's extremely young still for his overall experience. He has on-ball skills, positional size, standing about 6'6", 6'7". Obviously, he's been listed at 6'8" in the past. I'm not sure if he's quite that big, but he's able to handle the ball, make decisions, and play make a bit. Averages over 14 points per game, nearly 3 boards, 3.5 assists roughly, and he's been relatively efficient as a scorer as well, over 45% from the floor, which is exactly what you're looking for from someone who is a guard creating a ton of offense. A lot of self-creation in there, a lot of creation for others. He has a tough task, a tough role to find efficiency. He's been relatively efficient. Obviously, that 33% three-point percentage isn't pretty, but I think there's a lot to build on here for Djurisic moving forward. He's a player to me that I think is going to continue to climb up boards. This is a big week for him being here in the States. Hopefully, obviously, with the new draft combine, the expectation is that all of these overseas guys are going to be here. So Djurisic, I think, has a lot to prove. But he has a lot of on-ball skills, the size, and again, that playmaking feel I think will show up in the combine as well. If he shoots the ball well during drills, this is a player who we're going to see him really ascend up boards in the last month or so of the process. So I think Djurisic is going to be a vital watch for everyone this upcoming week. Obviously, draft lottery, combine, everything's going to be on television. Make sure to watch out for this guy. I think there's a lot to like in his game. I think we're going to find a lot of his skills translatable to the NBA as well. Then we move on to Trentyn Flowers, playing in the NBL this past year for the Adelaide 36ers. Previously had committed to Louisville, ended up withdrawing from Louisville and decommitting there before he had even stepped foot on campus officially. And if you look at his numbers, they're not necessarily pretty. 5 points a game, less than 3 boards, less than half assist. You might say, well, what are we really working with here? But you have to remember, he was playing pro basketball. He wasn't given a ton of minutes, but when he did have minutes, he was rather efficient and effective. There was one game early in the season for the 36ers where they actually let Trentyn Flowers play in the fourth quarter, and he closed the game for them. So he had some incredible flashes throughout the season as both a scorer and as an athlete, and I think with some of his guard skills specifically, you're going to see him be able to adjust to the NBA as a hybrid wing. And listen, at the beginning of the year, Adelaide tried making him a point guard. Just didn't work. It didn't fit, didn't flow. I don't think he is an NBA point guard. What I do think he is a combo wing guard who can defend across multiple positions, pretty similar to what we see from Nickeil Alexander-Walker in Minnesota. Now, Trentyn Flowers is a little bit bigger than him. I think a little bit more athletic even than Nickeil, but I don't think he has quite the offensive juice or creation ability that Nickeil has flashed at times throughout his career. But Flowers, with his size, athleticism, and some of his playmaking, now not a ton yet, he hasn't been able to consistently showcase that. There are flashes, though, that make me believe he could be a good pickup as a guard combo wing who, again, the big thing here is he's got the size, athleticism to turn into a very good defensive player, and he's been working extremely hard on his game. He's a good kid. I think he's going to be a really nice pickup for an NBA organization. I still have a back end of the first round to early second round grade on him. I think depending on how this draft goes, a team could really sneakily pick him up in the 20s and add him into a young collection of pieces. I think Boston would be another great example. Obviously, I've referenced them already with Baylor, Scheierman. Teams that are looking to get talent in, I think in my most recent mock, I had the Washington Wizards take him and use him as kind of a unique defensive player alongside Bilal Coulibaly. I think that if you're looking to build up a collection of perimeter defenders, Trentyn Flowers is going to be a very good pickup for you. Now, he has a ways to go in terms of giving you real quality NBA minutes. That's just the reality. That's where this draft class is currently at. But Trentyn Flowers, to me, is a player who I do believe in. I think long-term is going to turn into a quality NBA player for sure. Moving on now to my next prospect, Izan Almansa, the Spanish-born center/forward, I think has a lot to like in his game. Coming into the year, I looked at him as a potential top 20 pick in this year's draft. Just didn't have the season for the G League Ignite program that I was hoping to see from him, especially when it comes to an impact on winning. The Ignite program was just pretty poor this year, even with a couple of lottery picks in Matas Buzelis and Ron Holland. They just struggled to win. Obviously, the program's getting shut down now, which I think is probably for the better just with how things have gone. I think if the NBA was smart, they would have spread these kids around like the NBL Next Stars program, where these 18, 19-year-old kids are getting placed into roles alongside other professional players rather than just a whole team of them trying to make it work against 24, 25-year-old pros who have more conditioned bodies and more mature, more experience. It was kind of destined to fail, honestly. I like that they went out and tried something. I like that they were trying to be innovative with the route for college kids. I think it did help impact the NIL situation and getting some of these kids paid when they're making so much money for their colleges. But Almansa specifically for me, the reason that I like him in this draft, and I think there's a chance that he really impresses people this upcoming week, he's got more passing IQ and more feel offensively than just about any other big man in this class. Now, that's a little bit of a stretch. There's obviously some, like Sar has pretty good overall feel and body positioning. But I'm talking on the offensive end of the floor specifically. Almansa is just seemingly a play ahead a lot of the time, which you don't really see out of big men. I think if you're looking at a way for him to find real success in the NBA, you're using him as a high-volume screen and short roll big, where you're getting him the ball around 12 to 15 feet away from the hoop, and from there you're asking him to make decisions. If they don't step to you, get to your floater, get to the rim. If they do step towards you, put up the ball in the air for a lob dunk to a baseline dunker spot sitter. Otherwise, from there, he can spray the ball out to shooters. I think he's going to be a very unique role man in this year's draft. While there's a lot of physical players like Yves Missi, for example, who can really jump out of the gym. They also have a dynamic role man in like Day'Ron Holmes from Dayton, who can step out behind the three-point line and knock down shots consistently, but he's also a very good roller with touch around the rim, a very good right baby hook. Almansa is less of a scorer, less of a physical specimen, and more so someone who's going to be able to beat you with his IQ and decision making, and that's what impresses me the most about him, where again, I think the playmaking is going to impress people during live scrimmages, and I think one of the big questions for him is how well does he shoot the ball this week as well. Only shot 38% from the free throw line this past year, very, very bad. Shot 22% on threes as well. Just did not have a good year shooting the basketball with any type of range, but he was still efficient as an overall scorer, 52% from the floor. It's not great. I'm not saying he was the most efficient player ever, but it was respectable. And his body conditioning, I think, was at a better level this season than I was expecting it to be. That was a question for him coming into this year's draft cycle of what's his body going to be like? Is he going to stay in shape? And I think he lightened up a bit, and I think he got to a pretty respectable mark with his physical conditioning. So Almansa, for me, stands out as a player to watch this week. And then moving into our next one, I have Tyon Grant-Foster here out of GCU. And he's an interesting prospect for sure. 20 points per game this past year for the Lopes, over 6 rebounds. Previously played for Kansas and DePaul, over an assist per game as well. The issue here, so he's a superb athlete. He can really jump out of the gym. Big part of what GCU was looking to do with their overall program over the last couple of years is implement as much athleticism. They want to get up and down the court. They want to jump out of the gym. They want to have a bunch of defensive playmakers. If you think back to their weekend opener against St. Mary's in the NCAA tournament, I believe they had like 7 or 8 blocks in the first 4 minutes of that game. Just overwhelmed St. Mary's with their length and athleticism, and Tyon Grant-Foster really is the epitome of that on their roster. Now, there are some concerns here. He's 24 years old. He wasn't the most efficient scorer of the basketball. This week, he has to prove he's NBA ready today. He can't be a prospect where teams look at him and say, well, in 2 to 3 years, he could turn into something. That's going to be a problem. Okay, that can't be what he shows this upcoming week. He has to show that he can fit into a role today. If there's a comparison I have for Tyon Grant-Foster, Derrick Jones Jr. And now that might sound crazy because Grant-Foster here averaged 20 points per game. And it really comes from a physical standpoint of his athleticism, in the way that I expect his role to translate in the NBA. Role scalability is going to be a huge thing here for Grant-Foster. This week he has to prove that he is capable working off the baseline. He has to be able to play off the catch more. At GCU, with a team that had a ton of athleticism and a ton of, big physical athletic bodies around Grant-Foster, he was really relied upon to be their shot creator, their shot maker, their difficult shot shooter. And coming into the NBA, that will not be his role in any way. He's going to have to adjust to being someone who can sit in the corner, knock down catch and shoot corner threes. He's going to have to attack closeouts, get to the rim, dunk the basketball, finish at the rim. And that's where my comp for Derrick Jones Jr. comes in. Looking at his efficiency now, you'd say, oh my gosh, I don't know if this guy can be an effective role player, especially with that 33% three-point percentage. I think if you scale down his responsibility, put him in a role where he's catching and shooting instead of having to dribble the ball 4, 5, 6 times and then get up a shot against a defender in isolation, that's where we're going to see Grant-Foster find more success and more efficiency moving forward. So for me, I think he is a very under-the-radar prospect. At this point, I know obviously he's made his fair share of plays this past season. I'm sure most people do know who he is, but for him to really cement himself as a real likely draft pick, he has to have a good week ahead of him, but I think he definitely could with his overall collection of traits, tools, and size. I think he is someone who could impress this week. Let's talk about a few more NBA draft prospects that I think are worth watching for. This is that little bonus segment here at the end. I talked about 3 lottery prospects who need to have good weeks or should have good weeks. And I also talked about 5 under-the-radar prospects. Here are 5 more names that I think are very essential to watch this week. Cam Christie, coming out of Minnesota, the Golden Gopher, shot very, very well this year from 3. He stands about 6'6". He's the brother of Lakers wing Max Christie. So another Big Ten product here for the Christie family. Cam Christie specifically, if he shoots the ball well this week, he could definitely cement himself as a potential second-round pick. I've heard some rumors about some teams having consideration for him in the end of the first round. I don't necessarily know if I buy into that as much, but I do think he is a name to watch this week. Bronny James out of USC. Now, people are going to take exception to what I say here, but Bronny James has the makeup of an NBA player. Now, his physicality, his size, there are some concerns there, of course, but I think when you look at what he's going to be on the NBA floor, I think he's not too small, because I think you're going to ask him to guard point guards because he's quick, has good hands, and he's very, very smart. I think he can navigate screens well, and I think he can be a positive impact team defender, kind of in ways that Mike Conley was throughout his career. Very quick hands, just positionally in the right spot a lot of the time. I think Bronny James can have a similar impact on the defensive end of the floor, maybe not quite as good as Mike Conley was, who even made all defense one time. But Bronny James, I think, can be a quality NBA defender and honestly a plus defender in the NBA with his overall collection of IQ, activity, and his just defensive feel. And then offensively, something that didn't shine at USC was his connectivity. And because of that, the reason for that, is that Isaiah Collier slowed down the offense drastically. If you watch USC play, Isaiah Collier dribbled the ball so many times, held the ball so long. USC just didn't have a good overall collection of movement and spacing in their offense. They played 2 bigs a lot of the time. Obviously still a staple in college basketball. The importance of the big man in the NCAA is definitely more drastic than it is in the NBA because of the way that coaches operate, but USC's coach got fired. So I think if you're looking at USC overall, I don't think it was a fair year to really assess Bronny James. He had a cardiac arrest before the year, and with the assumption that he does get drafted, my assumption is that he will get cleared medically and that everyone will be able to accept that the cardiac arrest is a thing of the past and not affecting his draft stock now. That obviously is still something that we have to see, but I think Bronny James will impress people this year with his play, especially in the combine. Zach Edey could be someone who, listen, some NBA, ESPN draft analysts have been floating as a lottery pick. I just don't really see that. I do think he is going to be a first-round selection this year, though. And I think if he has a really great week here and he just dominates scrimmages and dominates games. And I think the big thing is defensively, if he gets a bunch of blocks and protects the rim and deters shots at the rim, that's Edey's best pathway to getting into the lottery. So we'll see what happens. I don't see him as a lottery pick right now, but if he has a great week ahead of him here, perhaps. Jonathan Mogbo from San Francisco, just another player who I think is important to keep our eyes on here with his overall physical makeup and some of the tools that he showcased at San Francisco. I think he's a name that right now has been on my second round radar mostly, but I wouldn't be completely shocked if he somehow slips into the first round. Then Hunter Sallis from Wake Forest, former Gonzaga recruit, someone who, if you go back to my 2021 NBA mock drafts, my way too early one following the 2020 NBA draft, Hunter Sallis was someone I had mocked in the first round way back when. Just didn't work out at Gonzaga. Mark Few just stopped playing him, and ultimately Sallis transferred out to Wake Forest. And a big reason why Sallis was struggling early in his college career was he couldn't shoot the ball. Well, fast forward to this year, he shot the ball a lot, and he shot it very, very efficiently. So he could have a big week ahead of him as well here. If he really kind of proves his three-point shot ready for the NBA, he could definitely be someone who floats in between that high second round or late first round conversation, especially with all the questions we have in this year's draft about who goes where in the top 20, 30, 40 picks. Having a good week and really setting yourself apart here in the next 7 days could really be what transforms mock drafts and what transforms some of these kids' futures going forward, which is super exciting, and it's a great year to have full participation in the draft lottery. Really hope you guys did enjoy. Thank you all so much for watching. It was a blast recording this video, talking about all of these awesome NBA draft prospects we're excited to watch and see. So if you guys did enjoy, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.